Stop what you are doing right now because there is a story developing inside the Toronto Blue Jays organization that every single fan of this team needs to understand before opening day, and it is more complicated, more heartbreaking, and frankly more important than any of the star power headlines coming out of Dunedin right now. While Vladdy is hitting bombs at the World Baseball Classic and Addison Barger is launching 410-foot rockets in spring training, there is a quieter, more painful story unfolding behind the scenes. 5 pitchers have been removed from Major League camp. 2 of them, Ricky Tiedemann and Jake Bloss, are names that Blue Jays fans have been waiting years to see walk through the Rogers Center tunnel and take the mound. And as of right now, 10 full days after being shut down, Ricky Tiedemann has not thrown a single baseball. Hit that like button right now, make sure you are subscribed, and let's get into why this story matters more than you think. Let's start with what actually happened, because the headline reads like a routine spring training cleanup, but the context tells a completely different story. The Blue Jays announced 5 roster moves: Tiedemann and Jake Bloss option to AAA Buffalo, and Tanner Andrews, Nate Garko, and Che Yeager reassigned to minor league camp. On paper, it looks like the normal end of February trimming of the roster down toward opening day shape. Teams do this every year. Names get shuffled, invitees go home, prospects head to affiliates. Normal. But here is the detail that changes everything. Neither Tiedemann nor Bloss appeared in a single spring training game for the Blue Jays, as both continue recovering from injuries. Not one inning. Not one batter faced. They came to Dunedin, they dressed in the uniform, they were listed on the roster, and then injuries silenced them both before they could throw a single pitch in a game setting. That is not a roster move. That is a medical update wearing the clothes of a roster move. Let's talk about Ricky Tiedemann first, because his situation carries the most emotional weight and the most urgency for this organization. If you have followed the Blue Jays for the past 3 years, you know this name. You have been told this name is special. 2 years removed from being one of the top pitching prospects in the sport, the big lefty who could push the human body and every iPad the Blue Jays own to the limit, Tiedemann is still just 23 years old, standing in Dunedin with a scar on his left elbow and a career that has been repeatedly derailed by the cruelest force in baseball, the fragile human arm. Injuries have overtaken Tiedemann's development over the past several seasons, with elbow, biceps, and shoulder complications limiting him to just 61.1 combined innings since the start of 2023. Let that land for a second. In 3 years, one of the most gifted pitching prospects in baseball has thrown 61 innings. At his peak, a healthy major league starter can throw that many innings in less than 3 months. Tiedemann has managed that total over 3 years, spread thin across a blur of rehab assignments, setbacks, shutdown periods, and the surgery that took an entire calendar year away from him entirely. After pitching just 17.1 innings in 2024, mainly split between single-A rehab stints and AAA, Tiedemann went under the knife for Tommy John surgery, missing the remainder of the 2024 season as well as all of the 2025 season. He watched his Blue Jays go all the way to Game 7 of the World Series from the outside, rehabbing his surgically repaired elbow while teammates he had come up with were making history on the biggest stage. That kind of experience, being so close to something special and yet completely unable to participate, is its own form of injury. It damages something that no MRI can detect. So when Tiedemann showed up to camp this February, the optimism was genuine and earned. He had been feeling well in the last few weeks. "I feel amazing. Everything feels great," Tiedemann said in recent days before the setback. He had done the work over the winter. He had been smart about his preparation. He had been working on proactive solutions to take better care of his surgically repaired left arm, including altering the grips of his 3-pitch arsenal, particularly his slider, because he knew, based on bitter experience, that the old grip was putting unsustainable torque on the joint that had already failed him once. He was building better habits. He was being smarter. He looked, as manager John Schneider observed after watching his early bullpen sessions, like a man who had done everything right over the winter. And then, during a side session in late February, something felt wrong. Tiedemann experienced left elbow soreness after his recent throwing session. He was shut down from throwing for a week and re-evaluated. An MRI came back clean, with no structural damage found, which was the best possible result given the circumstances. No new structural damage. The bolt is still holding. The surgery itself is intact. That is the good news, and it is genuinely good news worth holding on to. But here's the part that keeps Blue Jays fans up at night. 10 days after being shut down, Tiedemann has not yet resumed throwing. Manager John Schneider kept it short but hopeful, saying, hopefully in the next couple of days he should be back at it. 10 days. For a fan base that has watched this kid fight through setback after setback, that quote lands somewhere between relief and cautious dread, as one reporter perfectly put it. You hear Schneider's optimism and you want to believe it. And then you remember that you have heard optimistic updates before, followed by difficult news shortly after. The honest truth. The truth that everyone in the organization knows even if they are careful about how they say it publicly, is that what makes this injury so difficult is the history. Same elbow, same anxiety, same waiting. The talent has never been the question. Staying healthy long enough to use it has. Tiedemann has a mid to the upper 90s fastball and the kind of secondary stuff that keeps hitters off balance. He is, on pure stuff, one of the best young pitching arms in the entire sport. When he is right, he is genuinely electric. But being right, for Ricky Tiedemann, has proven to be the one thing that is almost impossible to sustain. The plan going into this spring was never to have Tiedemann on the opening day roster. The rotation is already full, with Dylan Cease and Kevin Gausman headlining, and Trey Yesavage having earned his spot after a strong debut late last season. The plan was AAA Buffalo to start, build innings, and work toward a late-season bullpen role in Toronto. That path still exists. The MRI is clean. Schneider is hopeful. But the elbow needs to cooperate, and right now the elbow is making everyone wait. Now let's talk about Jake Bloss, because his story is different from Tiedemann's in its details but shares the same fundamental tragedy at its core. A supremely talented young pitcher whose body has refused to let him show what he can do. Bloss arrived in the Blue Jays organization through a trade that Toronto fans know very well. He was one of 3 players, arguably the top player, the Jays received in last summer's trade sending Yusei Kikuchi to Houston. The trade was debated intensely at the time because Kikuchi was a proven major league starter and Bloss was still unproven at the big league level. But the Blue Jays believed in his ceiling. They took the long view. Drafted in the 3rd round of the 2023 draft by the Houston Astros, Bloss made 6 starts in 7 outings to end that season, finishing with a 2.89 ERA over 18.2 innings. He skyrocketed up the minor league ladder in 2024, making starts at High A, AA, and AAA before the Astros called him up to their big league roster. He made 3 starts in the majors, was roughed up by hitters who were better prepared for him than the minor leaguers he had been facing, and then was dealt to Toronto as part of the Kikuchi return. He was 23 years old and felt like he was right on the doorstep of becoming a legitimate piece of the Blue Jays' future rotation. Then came May 13, 2025. Jake Bloss departed his 6th start with AAA Buffalo due to an elbow injury, completing just 3.1 innings. An MRI confirmed UCL damage and surgery was scheduled with Dr. Keith Meister, a name Blue Jays fans have grown all too familiar with in recent years. The procedure, whether full Tommy John or an internal brace, wiped out the rest of his 2025 season and put his 2026 timeline in genuine uncertainty. To this day, it's still unclear to the public whether or not Bloss received a full Tommy John surgery or received a brace. If it's the case of the latter, Bloss should realistically be available to start the season or early into it, while full Tommy John surgery would mean he'll potentially be back in the summer. Bloss is working his way back from surgery. He underwent UCL reconstruction early last season after being acquired from the Houston Astros at the 2024 trade deadline. Like Tiedemann, he has not thrown a single pitch in a spring training game. Like Tiedemann, he arrived in Dunedin on the mend, working through a recovery process that the Blue Jays are managing with extreme caution. And like Tiedemann, his path to contributing to the Blue Jays in 2026 runs directly through how well and how quickly that arm responds. The 3 other pitchers, Tanner Andrews, Nate Garko, and Che Yeager, round out this wave of moves, and each of their stories adds another layer to the full picture of what is happening in Toronto's pitching department. Andrews, 30 years old, signed a minor league deal with a spring training invite, made 3 appearances, and pitched to a 0.00 ERA. 0 runs allowed in his spring outings. On raw results, he did everything he could possibly do to earn a spot. But even when a pitcher posts good numbers, the spot on the main roster depends on many other factors: contract options, roster space, season planning, and sometimes there simply isn't room. Andrews did his job. The math just did not add up in his favor. Garco, 28, also made 3 appearances but finished with a 13.50 ERA, numbers that in any spring training are a difficult argument to make. His reassignment makes sense on the surface even if you wish the talented arm had found better results. And then there is Che Yeager, whose situation is perhaps the most difficult on this entire list because he did not even get to pitch. Yeager underwent his own UCL reconstruction surgery on February 25th, ending his season before it even started. His year ended before the first official pitch of spring training was thrown. He came to camp, had something go wrong in his arm, went under the knife, and is now looking at a full-year recovery while everyone else moves forward. Pull back and look at this entire picture together and something sobering comes into focus. The Blue Jays are a team with genuine World Series ambitions. They reached Game 7 last October and came within 1 out of winning it all. Their major league roster is built to compete right now. But their pitching depth pipeline is riddled with injury. Tiedemann, Bloss, T.J. Brock, and Adam Macko have all undergone notable surgeries in recent periods, making Toronto one of the organizations with the most young arms in various stages of recovery. When you layer Yeager's brand new UCL surgery on top of that, you begin to see just how thin the pipeline actually is when you strip away the names that cannot currently throw. The bullpen is one area where the 2025 American League champions had noticeable gaps. The 2025 Jays lacked a true shutdown reliever and ultimately paid the price for that in Game 7 of the World Series, and the 2026 pen remains largely the same aside from the addition of Tyler Rogers. That is precisely why Tiedemann's recovery matters so much beyond the sentimental attachment Blue Jays fans have to his story. If he gets healthy, if he builds up through Buffalo and forces the conversation in the second half of the season, he would quickly be one of the 13 best pitchers in this organization and a bullpen role would await him later in the season. A healthy Ricky Tiedemann as a high-leverage left-handed reliever going into a postseason run could be the piece that changes everything for this team. But only if the elbow cooperates. And that is the painful paradox that sits at the center of everything the Blue Jays are doing right now. On the one hand, they have built one of the most exciting rosters in baseball, with star power at every level and a genuine belief that this team can go back to the World Series and finish the job. On the other hand, the young arms that were supposed to be the next generation of this rotation, the depth that ensures this competitive window stays open for years, keep getting taken off the field before they can prove themselves. The Blue Jays are not panicking. They are being patient. They are protecting their pitchers, managing recoveries carefully, and trusting the process that has always been at the core of how this organization builds. And that patience is admirable, even when it is agonizing to watch from the outside. But opening day is less than 3 weeks away. Ricky Tiedemann has not thrown a baseball in 10 days. Jake Bloss has not thrown a pitch in a game this entire spring. And somewhere in Dunedin, a fan base that has been waiting years to see these arms fulfill their potential is doing the only thing it can do right now, holding its breath and hoping the next update starts with the word healthy. So here is the question I want to put to you before you go. When you look at Ricky Tiedemann and Jake Bloss, the injuries, the lost time, the setbacks, all of it, do you still believe these